Hello and welcome to our program Where God Weeps in Depth. My name is Mark Riedemann, and through a series of short stories, we hope to bring you closer to the realities of the Catholic Church and her work in remote areas all around the world, especially in those places where she suffers discrimination and even persecution. Today we're going to be looking at the country of Pakistan. The country shares borders with India, Afghanistan, Iran, and China. Pakistan was founded in 1947 following the end of the British colonial rule in India. The founding father, Mohammed Ali Jinnah, envisioned a country which, although based on Islam, was to be at the same time pluralistic, accepting believers of other faiths. Today, the population is predominantly Muslim, with Hindus, Sikhs and Christians being very small minorities. While initially founded on ideals including religious freedom, Pakistan today is ruled by a legal system based on the religious precepts of Islam, principally the Quran and the Hadith, called Sharia. This strict interpretation, coupled with its abuse by a small number of radical fundamentalists, results in minority religious groups often facing discrimination and persecution. Here now is the story of Pakistan.
Pakistan, the third biggest Islamic state in the world. A nuclear power in a continually smouldering dispute with India and Afghanistan. A key player on the international arena in the battle between moderate Islam and radical fundamentalism. What direction will it take? Over 190 million people live in Pakistan, which makes it the sixth most populous country on the planet. It is also a very young society. The average age and life expectancy are respectively 22 and 66 years, with a high population growth rate. 45% of the population is illiterate. The people make up a very diverse ethnic mosaic, from Punjabis who hold the majority of administrative posts, through inhabitants of the largely agricultural Sindh province, governed by wealthy landowners, to Baluch and Pathans from the less accessible mountainous areas of the northwest, clans who live according to their own tribal laws. The glory days of territories that make up present-day Pakistan reach back 2.5 millennia before Christ, and the growth of cities that belong to the Indus Valley civilization, one of the most ancient in the world. Islam arrived here thanks to Arab traders and Persian conquests early in the 8th century. Whilst in the 16th and 17th centuries, the Islamic Mughal Empire prospered in these areas. 100 years later, the East India Company began operating in India and gradually took control over a territory that subsequently in the 19th century became the British Raj, with Queen Victoria as Empress of India. The colonial period ended in 1947 with the breakup of the country and the creation of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan for India's Muslims. The dialogue with India remains a serious challenge for Pakistan's leadership. The dispute over Kashmir, unresolved since partition, has already resulted in 2 armed conflicts. The Third War ended in 1971, with East Pakistan gaining independence as Bangladesh. Kashmir continues to suffer border skirmishes, and both countries are in possession of a nuclear weapon. The ongoing war in neighbouring Afghanistan is also proving destructive, whilst the official cooperation of the government in Islamabad with the United States does not add to the authorities' popularity amongst its citizens, especially the Pathans. Mohammed Ali Jinnah, Pakistan's founding father, was an English-educated, not especially religious lawyer. He aimed to create a secular state in which Islam was to have a unifying influence, a country with a multi-ethnic society, with equality before the law guaranteed for all citizens, irrespective of religious belief. The situation began to change in 1974 when Zulfikar Ali Bhutto's government, in response to pressure from the religious right, recognized the minority Islamic Ahmadiyya community to be non-Muslim. Any signs of tolerance were finally buried in the 1980s by General Zia-ul-Haq's government, who formed an alliance with radical imams and conservatives in the military and subsequently introduced elements of Islamic Sharia law. In spite of its 65-year history, Pakistan continues to look for direction. The country has already survived several government and military coups, as well as the assassinations of high-level politicians. The showdown between those in favor of a secular government, preferred by the educated modern elite and elements in the armed forces, and fundamentalist Muslims wanting to create a religious state based on Sharia law, continues unabated. The northwest part of the country, comprising the tribal territories and the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, governs itself in accordance with its own local laws. As a consequence, an unremitting civil war continues to be fought between government forces and the Pakistani Taliban, who support the Afghan Jihad and Al-Qaeda. The dispute over Islam's role in the political process deepens as a consequence of the Afghan war and becomes ever more radical. Terrorist bomb attacks, bloody riots, and targeted killings are the order of the day. Crimes involving financial corruption and the drug trade proliferate. Those who suffer most are poor Pakistanis and religious minorities, Shiite, Sikh, Hindu, and Christian.
From the beginning, we have been a very small minority, about 2%. And now the certain factors like the increasing of Islamic extremism and intolerance, we find ourselves in a very difficult situation. There have been attacks on churches, many cases of blasphemy, as a result of which there's been a lot of violence against Christians.
Accusations of blasphemous acts against the Prophet Muhammad or abuse of the Quran are not only directed at Christians. Muslims are even more impacted by the blasphemy law. But in the case of Christians, this law continues to be used as an instrument that not only legitimizes the elimination of individuals, but of whole Christian communities. Penalty for blasphemy is death, following hasty rulings in lower courts, based on fabricated evidence and pressure of local imams and an over-enthused crowd. Such sentences have so far been overruled by the Supreme Court, though the accused have to wait years in death cells for the court ruling, whilst their families are forced to run and hide despite the final acquittal. Chances of this misused law being changed are, under present circumstances, practically nil. Job discrimination, violence, as well as kidnappings, rape, and the forceful conversion of young women to Islam are further challenges that Christians, one of Pakistan's poorest and uneducated groups, have to cope with.
We are at a very critical point, and I'm talking on the level of Pakistan, in our history. We see this very strong trend of the, I use the word, extremist groups who have a very narrow interpretation of Islam and who would want to have a purely Islamic state. I'm talking about the extremist view which rejects democracy. I think that the majority of the Muslims in Pakistan are not thinking like this. They are very moderate Muslims, but the extremist forces seem to be gaining ground at the moment. Gaining ground not by winning the minds of the people, but by using forceful and violent tactics.
As Archbishop Coutts describes, religious minorities face persecution at the hands of few. Christians are targeted because of their faith, but also because they are associated with the West, and as such, are viewed as outsiders. For some radical fundamentalists, to kill a Christian guarantees them a place in heaven. In reality, however, Christians are far from outsiders. They are of the soil. Archbishop Sebastian Shaw, the Archbishop of the capital city Lahore, explains the presence and the role of Christians in Pakistan's foundation.
One thing just I want to explain you, that Pakistan came into being on 14th August 1947. Before the creation of Pakistan, when the founder of Pakistan, Mohammed Ali Jinnah, he realized and felt that the Muslim in India and also other minorities like Christians, they are treated as a like second class citizen because of the caste system and based also of the social caste system and also of religion. Then he started movement to have a separate country for Muslims and also other minorities who will join them. And when the Christians heard this movement, they were happy. They said, okay, we will also support. And especially Punjab, where I come from now, it was to be divided. And that time in Punjab, now in Pakistan, Pakistani Punjab now, there were leaders like S.P. Bahadur Singha and Joshua Din Fazal and Chaudhry Lal Chandu Lal. They were very important Christian leaders that time. Quaid-e-Azam, Mohammed Ali Jinnah, the founder, he himself approached these Christian leaders. He asked them that we need your support. And they agreed to support the founder of Pakistan. And I also think that because Muslims were also minority in India at that time, Christians were also minority. Though in the mind of Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the founder, was to make a separate state for Muslim. But he also realized that there are other minorities and we need one another also for the creation of Pakistan and also for the future of Pakistan. He was quite liberal type man. So in this way they supported. Even there was a time when the counting was to be done that how many Muslims are in this region. And the Christian leader that time, they said, okay, our Christian establishments should also be counted as a Muslim so that it will show that in this region there are more Muslims. It is recorded, even in a British library also. Then slowly, there is some like bias feeling started that why Christians should be there and this and that. But at the same time, many Christians were in army, Pakistan army. They were in judiciary. In education, when Pakistan came into being, there were hardly government schools, state schools. The majority schools or the prominent schools, high standard school were all with the Catholic Church and also Anglican Church or Presbyterian Church with the Christians. So in this way, we educated many leaders. We prepared many leaders for Pakistan.
Today, there's a strong tension regarding the role of Islam in the country between the mainly well-educated modern elite and some members of the armed forces who favor a secular state on the one side, with Islamic fundamentalists aspiring to set up an Islamic state on the other. As Archbishop Shaw explains, the turning point came under the administration of the military dictator General Zia-ul-Haq, who ruled the country from the late 1970s into the late 80s, and his introduction of elements of Islamic Sharia law, most notably that of the blasphemy law. Nothing has done more damage to the principle of religious freedom and relations between the majority Muslim population and religious minorities than the blasphemy law. Professor Mobeen Shahid explains the first attempts in 1973 by Zaid Ali Bhutto to distinguish between religious traditions, which were later formalized into the constitution to defend Sunni Islam by General Zia-ul-Haq, specifically through the introduction of Articles 29(5)(b) and (c), the blasphemy laws.
till 1973, when Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, who was the martial law administrator, even he was not a soldier, he made the first amendment introducing the first constitution of Pakistan, which was recognized nationally. And by that time we had already lost East Pakistan, which had become Bangladesh. And he discriminated Ahmadis, calling them non-Muslims in the constitution of Pakistan. You see, instead of remaining first-class Pakistani citizens, they became minorities, being considered non-Muslims, just like other Christians and Hindus who are second or third grade Pakistani Christians, because Pakistani citizens, because that I will also highlight later what are the consequences of this law and also the constitution, which does not consider them full-fledged Pakistani citizens. Then from 1984 to 86, Ziaul Haq, who condemned Zulfikar Ali Bhutto to death, and then he was hanged. He made certain amendments in the constitution, and according to 295B, if a person intentionally or non-intentionally desecrates or insults the Holy Quran, he can be condemned to life imprisonment. Whereas 295C, you see, explicits that if someone intentionally or non-intentionally insults the Holy Prophet, he can be imprisoned for lifetime or even condemned to death. In 1990s, during Benazir's government, there have been pressures, and in Nawaz Sharif's second mandate, the life imprisonment was taken off, and only death penalty is present there. And now the problem is that the blasphemy law in itself might not be so dangerous as it has become because of the extrajuridical use of or abuse of this law.
As Professor Shahid explains, the laws are often abused to serve personal interests. Dr. Cecile Chaudhry, the former executive director of the National Commission for Justice and Peace, a human rights body of the Catholic Church in Pakistan, outlines how this happens.
First of all, I would say that the laws itself, initially, like as you said, the law was meant to protect all the different castes and different creeds that were within the country. Unfortunately, if we look into history, we'll see that most of these, most of the cases that have come up have always been to sort of settle a personal score. And it is used, I would say rather misused, in order to take revenge, or to, if you have a disagreement with somebody, and then you want to get back at that person. It has also been used in cases of just, if there's a conflict between a land or something and the other person accuses the other person of this law. So it has been misused, unfortunately, within our country. The law is such that it is very easily abused and taken advantage of. And therefore, I think there are steps that the government needs to take in order to ensure that when cases of blasphemy are come up, or someone is accused, the case should not straight away be filed. There should be some sort of a check and balance to actually see whether there is any authenticity in this. And unfortunately, it has become so difficult that even the accusation is enough to create a riot situation or a mob-like violence situation in the country.
What are the realities of being discriminated by such laws? What does it mean to become a victim of a mob? Sandal and Gushar Masih and Teresa Bibi share their stories.
We attended church in the evening. Children would come in the evening, and we would teach them Bible verses and thereby get to know the Bible together. Then one day these people came along and told us to turn off the loudspeaker. Well, we turned it off. The next day, the same people threatened us by saying, "We will kill you." And then they approached us and began throwing stones, so that all the children began to cry. We ran away, closing the church behind us. They broke into the church and wrecked it. They also beat us up and threw stones at us. Then they went to the mosque and declared that I had burned the pristine Quran. They accused us, telling, her father ripped the pages out of the book and handed them to her, and she cut and burnt them.
No Christian would ever do such a thing, nor do we consider it a courageous act.
I was home in the evening. We were about to start eating when they once again started throwing stones. We had no idea what to do. Then my younger sister began to cry. We sat down together and began to pray. Around 9:30, they began a great demonstration, throwing stones, hurling insults and making threats, all at the same time. At that point we became very scared, so I made a call and the police arrived. They locked me up in a separate cell, took away my blanket and the rest. That is how you will spend the night here. And you will not get your blanket or any food until you declare your acceptance of Islam. They locked me up in a warehouse with sacks strewn all over, with no light or ventilation. If the Son of God, Jesus Christ's face was spat upon, and stones were thrown at him, all for our sake, if for our sake he could go through all that, then what we are experiencing is as nothing.
मेरा नाम चीज़ा यूनाबाद में इतने रहते फिर जो साढ़े ते केस बनया सी फिर उन्होंने मतलब जी तंजीम ने साढ़ा केस हैंडल किया सी ना उन्होंने सानू इत्थे बिठाया सी.
That's where Christian and this side is Muslim people. So even I didn't go there, it's this side carried me. The people see and boys us. Because we are trouble this problem, the people know about our case. There is her father burned the Quran.
केस यूसुफ सी ना उन्होंने कुरान दे मतलब इल्जाम लाया सी. इल्जाम लाया सी भी इन्होंने यूसुफ सी ने ना मतलब कि कुरान नूं ना अग ला दी है. ये 2005.
First, whenever they got an information about this kind of incident, they immediately arrest the person and never ever conduct the proper investigation.
तीन महीने सानू कोई पता नहीं उसे कित्थे रहे धक्के ठेडे इंज खांदे रहे पर जो उहदे नाल शदत किया गया सी ना मिलन दिता सानू जदों असीं ते नहीं मिले खैर मेरे देवर मिले सन जदों तो उदों बहुत ही ना मार के ना तो उहदा बुरा हाल कर छड़िया सी. जदों फिर सानू 3 महीने बाद मिले ने ना उदों इन्हां दे दोवें गुठने जिहड़े होए निकले होए सन ऐसे बन के तंद मारदे हुंदे सन. लाइफ चेंज मतलब कोई ऐसा ही उदों दे हिसाब नाल लोग छुप के बह रहे कोई आज़ादी ना सी हजे तक फिर नहीं सकते. उत्थे असीं रहण सकदे उन्हां कहा जदों भी ये सब वापस आउणगे ना ते इन्हां दे बेटा जिहड़ा ना उहनूं असीं मार दांगे ते साडी सुन्नत च एक सवाब है. हाँ जी साडा मसीह ते ईमान सी. कोई कहने खुदा यसू दे नां ते उन्हां साडे यसू ने साडे नां ते आप ही कुर्बान होए सन ना जान दित्ती सी ना.
Jesus rose triumphant as the Prince of Life, conquering death. So too the courageous witness and even martyrdom of Christians in Pakistan does not spell disaster, but proclaims a great love. On March 15, 2015, 2 bombs exploded in the front of 2 churches in Jehanabad, a Christian suburb of Lahore. 17 people were killed, another 80 were wounded. The attacks were carried out on a Sunday to ensure the maximum damage. However, the harm caused by the explosion in front of St. John's Church could have been much worse had it not been for the efforts of 16-year-old Akash Bashir.
Akash was 18 years old when he stopped a suicide bomber from entering our church in Lahore. He was a volunteer to guard the church. There were more than 2,500 people that day in St. John's Catholic Church. Mass was being celebrated. He saw a man trying to storm into the church. The man said he had a bomb, but Akash didn't move. He held the terrorists to keep him from entering the church. The bomber blew himself up. Akash was killed instantly, but he saved many. It was an act of love. Akash was a young Catholic like me. He also experienced harassment, threats, and discrimination just for being a follower of Jesus. Akash, that like the martyrdom of many other Catholics in Pakistan, is our inspiration to endure until the end. In St. John's Parish, even after the attack and death of Akash, we have over 800 baptismas a year. We might be a poor church in resources, but we are rich in faith and love. I wonder if I could do the same as Akash. Even to convert to Islam would make our lives easier, but we don't. Every time I think of his death, I remember St. John's Gospel. There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friend.
The church in Pakistan today is and continues to be a persecuted church. Witnesses, even to the point of martyrdom, such as that of Akash, is that which will give rise to the next generation of Christians in Pakistan. The question is, will we stand with them? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for having been with us today on our program, Where God Weeps in Depth. And if you'd like to know more about the situation of Catholics in Pakistan, or perhaps how you might be able to help, I would encourage you to look at the contact information at the end of this program. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.